Michelle Parry-Slater is doing no plasters this month, but it's slightly different. For the first time, she's brought a guest, and that guest is Caroline Jones, who has a book called Knickers, Model's Own. And if that intrigues you, then just wait till you hear her story.
Hi, this month on No Plasters for Learning Now TV, I've got a special guest. I did suggest last month that you start speaking to people outside of learning and development to get a different perspective on things that we do. So this month I'm talking to Caroline Jones. Caroline, would you like to tell us a little bit about why you're here today? What did you do in 2015?
Thank you for having me. So my involvement is that I ran a campaign for a charity called Cancer Research UK, and my fundraising really took off via social media. My campaign had a very quirky name. It was called Knickers, Model's Own, and so we can explore that in a bit more detail if you want to. But it was a year of drive, of remembering my mum, because sadly she passed away from breast cancer in October 14, and it was my way of remembering her. It was a fundraising campaign, but it had much more further reach.
So you said it was called Knickers Model's Own. You can't leave us with that. You have to explain. What was the campaign all about?
So my idea for fundraising is most people, I think, when they have a loss, have this, obviously, this dreadful, dreadful, deep sadness. But also, I think I noticed a pattern of people wanting just to fundraise, to do something positive. And to remember my mum, who was a very active volunteer at the local charity shop where we both work and volunteer, I thought it would make sense to fuse fashion and cancer in some way. Both two subjects that were really sort of passionate for me and my mum. So I decided to dress up every single day of 2015 in a pre-loved outfit, other than my pants, my knickers, which would always remain my own.
Excellent. And it was a great campaign, and that's how, even though we only live a few miles away from each other, that's how we got to know each other.
Yeah.
Because it ran obviously at the same time as I was running the No Plasters campaign. And No Plasters is all about how to do things in learning and development in a very practical way. And there you were doing something very practical to remember your mum. One of the reasons why I think it's important that we, in learning and development, start talking to people outside of our normal sphere of influence is to just see what they can learn from their everyday activities, and if we can bring any of that in. So it'd be really great if you could explain to us, during the course of the year, what learning did you have? What changed for you? What behaviour changed for you as a result of the experience of wearing cancer research clothes every single day of the year for 2015?
I think my life was very much split into two. I had a very private grieving life that was going on, but then the other side of it was having to deal with the success of my campaign, which was so instantaneous. I hadn't prepared for that. It really did take off at a pace, and
so
that
preparation's key.
Well, that was because of social media. So my campaign was not at a local level, although I thought it was only ever going to be at a local level. And because of social media, because I tapped into Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and embraced all of that very quickly, I recognised that that was how my campaign, my fundraising actually was going to be successful. That long gone are the times where you just look at your immediate local network. So a learning I took from that was how to deal with the media, how to remain consistent with my voice, with my messaging. I was a presence every single day. My campaign was going to be driven for the year, and I had to deliver every single day. And the expectation was that I was going to provide a good picture with commentary and post it every single day, regardless of the weather, how I was feeling, how my emotions were feeling. And I would say that the mental strain was much harder than the physical strain, the physical thing of styling myself up, writing, finding clothes was actually an easier, required less effort than this mental little thing on my shoulder saying, do you know what? Yesterday you had a really good reaction to those pictures. People liked it. Today I don't think you're going to do it. And this was me. Saying this to myself. So my mental strength came through, my determination came through. I think that was something I learned about myself, that I was challenging myself every single day to put the best picture out there, to write the best copy.
That resilience that you're really talking about there is very prevalent in the workplace now. There's a lot of talk about mindfulness and about being aware as organisations that, you know, people are going through an emotional environment and people are not robots, you know.
No, not at all.
And clearly what you're describing there is drawing from within. But how did you actually do that? Did you have any support from, you know, you talked about using social media. Were you very active on social media? Was that something that you already did, or how did you actually get involved in that space?
So I was a massive follower on Twitter. I loved Twitter. I came from that world. Yes, Twitter. I came from that world, and I'd never really embraced Facebook. That was something I felt was for sharing pictures of your children and your cats and your holidays. And I didn't want to do that. I thought Twitter is inspiring, it's clever, it's witty. You connect with brands, you connect with people very, very quickly, get a great reaction. But actually Facebook for me was brilliant, and it is brilliant because it's widened my audience, it's taken my campaign global, and it's had a massive, massive impact on particularly on the donations.
So it's the fact that you already knew about social media that you could get involved in that space, but what you said you weren't prepared for was you know, the everydayness of it and the show of it, if you like.
Yes, I wasn't prepared for, I think, the impact the campaign had so quickly. The BBC interviewed me on week 1, as did the Mail Online. So by the end of the first week, I'd had 97,000 people had visited my Facebook page. I wasn't prepared for that. I thought 12 friends would look at my Facebook page, full stop. So that was a massive, massive learning. And in terms of support, I had to engage very quickly with the charity. So Cancer Research UK wrapped their arms around me and gave me social media support. They gave me marketing support, they gave me PR support, local level, again, area manager support, but also it was more than a national campaign. It was a global, it became global.
Yeah.
And so the buck did stop with me, and I had to really pull myself together and think, I know I'm grieving privately, but I actually have to put myself on a plinth here and perform. And I was representing their company on many occasions, you know, giving press interviews.
What I'm hearing when you're telling this story, because of course I saw the public face of it, and ironically, although I'm big on Twitter in terms of what I like to access, I don't really use Facebook that much, but that's where we came together.
Yeah.
I saw you on Facebook first, so there's an irony around that. But there's also that sense of expectation. You know, I looked forward to those photographs, and similarly in a learning space, when people put out new learning, there comes a point where the ownership has to be on the audience. The ownership has to be on those learners in an organisation to do something for themselves. So I felt in your campaign, I felt I wanted to support you, and I wanted to donate and to, you know, write comments to encourage you in a learning world, in an organisation. When all the spotlight is on, for example, an internal expert or on a learning and development manager, that is quite a lot of pressure. And so moving towards a self-directed environment where people, you know, you did it, you were self-directed, you learnt on the job, so to speak. There is an onus on the individual to actually step up, and you clearly did.
Absolutely, and I think the success of my donations, the donations that came in, which is one part of my campaign actually, I think it's had a lot of other splinters and effects, but the donations specifically were very much down to this two-way relationship that I built up with my audience. So, for example, you may have donated in February because you heard about the campaign in February, but you may have redonated again in December because you felt you were on the journey with me. And what it's taught me actually, and I talk about this publicly and at events and, you know, conferences, fundraising conferences, is this two-way relationship on whatever you're doing. That's how now on social media, that's where the success comes from. If you sponsor somebody who's doing a marathon, it's all very nice and you're doing a good thing, but you don't get anything back. And I actually now realise that I was giving you a fix every single day, 365 fixes you had from me.
One of the weirdest days of my life in 2015 was when I actually went to the school that our children go to and saw you in the outfit that I'd seen you on social media earlier in the day. Like, wow, she actually wears these clothes all day. This is a real thing that you're doing, which is fantastic.
And I think that's authenticity, isn't it? You know, I was really like that. And I think that's something that I've learned about myself, is to be authentic, to be honest, not to kid anybody because you'll get tripped up. And my other thing I talk about is just being nice. Just being nice. Social media gets a rap for being vicious and unpleasant and mean. And I have learnt now, particularly on social media, and just in my own life learnings, are to be around people that I enjoy their company, to be kind, to try and be positive. I think that's a very, very wholesome, good thing to do.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for talking to us. I hope that you can see, just by having a conversation with somebody totally outside of your own realm and sphere of influence, that there's huge amounts of benefit to do that. And, thanks ever so much, Colin. It's been so
Pleasure.
lovely to meet you in real life, or
you.
IRL, as they say on Twitter.
Oh, do they? Hashtag.